This was the mask found in the home of Edward Paisnell, the serial predator known as the Beast of Jersey, who spent more than a decade terrorizing the British island of Jersey by breaking into homes late at night wearing disguises to brutally assault women and children physically and sexually. By the time he was arrested in 1971, investigators linked him to at least 13 attacks spanning 11 years. Paisnell was eventually sentenced to 30 years in prison and died in 1994. These remains belong to a man executed by the breaking wheel, a form of capital punishment used in Europe between the 16th and 18th centuries. The condemned was tied to a wheel while an executioner deliberately broke the major bones of the body one by one, usually starting with the legs and moving upward. Death was often delayed, sometimes lasting hours or even days. After execution, the body was woven through the wheel and displayed in public, left exposed to weather and animals as a warning. Discovered in Austria in 2014, this skeleton shows injuries consistent with the method and provides rare physical evidence of one of history's most horrific executions. If you ever see this in the wild, you're already in big trouble. Caught on a trail cam, this video shows a skunk performing one of nature's most unmistakable warning displays. Before spraying, skunks often stomp their feet, hiss, raise their tail into a massive plume, and may even stand on their front legs in a final attempt to intimidate predators and avoid wasting their spray. If these warnings are ignored, they can accurately spray a foul-smelling liquid up to 15 feet, temporarily blind anything that gets it in its eyes, and leave an overpowering odor that can linger for days. Here's a photo of an elephant doing something scientists once thought was impossible. Using its tusks like pickaxes, it chips away at solid rock deep inside a cave. These Kenyan cave elephants squeeze through impossibly narrow passages, gradually carving out caves that can stretch for miles. But they're not looking for shelter, they're mining cave walls for mineral-rich salt, an essential nutrient that's scarce in their rainforest habitat. Generation after generation has followed the same underground routes, creating one of the animal kingdom's most extraordinary examples of natural mining. This is what it looks like when a hedgehog gets x-rayed. Hedgehogs instinctively curl into a tight, spiny ball when frightened, making it nearly impossible for veterinarians to get a clear x-ray. To safely examine them, vets sometimes gently tape their tiny legs to the x-ray plate so they can check for broken bones, swallowed objects, or other internal injuries. This photo shows an East German Stasi agent photographing a CIA agent at the exact moment the CIA agent was photographing him. During the Cold War, both sides constantly tracked and identified each other's spies, turning surveillance into a bizarre game of mutual espionage where no one was ever truly invisible. Here's a photo of one of the deadliest wild animals on Earth. Known as Dorbe, the rogue bull elephant has been linked to at least 25 human deaths in Nepal since 2010. In 2012, he trampled a husband and wife to death near Chitwan National Park, forcing his devastated son to move nearly 9 miles away across 2 rivers in hope that they'd never cross paths with him again. But 14 years later, Dorbe found them, raiding their home and killing the man's 25-year-old daughter-in-law and 4-year-old grandson, bringing the same family's death toll up to 4. The attacks have unfolded amid a growing human-elephant conflict, as shrinking habitat and growing villages have pushed elephants into closer contact with people. Despite being shot, fitted with multiple tracking collars, and closely monitored for years, Dorbe remains alive, and the surviving father now says, "There's nowhere left for us to run." Here's some terrifying footage from one of the most horrific flood disasters imaginable. After catastrophic flooding struck southern China in July of 2026, a snake breeding farm was destroyed, releasing about 900 snakes, including venomous cobras and kraits, into nearby villages. As residents waded through chest-deep floodwater, authorities warned that deadly snakes could be hiding just beneath the surface. Hospitals rushed to stock with antivenom, emergency teams were deployed to hunt the escaped reptiles, and several people were reportedly bitten while clearing flood debris. The flooding itself killed at least 39 people and forced 130,000 residents to evacuate. That is horrible, what the f? A deformed raccoon named Jimothy has gone viral after roaming Seattle with what experts believe to be short spine syndrome, a rare congenital condition that severely compresses the spine. Animals born with the disorder often struggle to survive in the wild because reduced mobility can make it harder to escape predators, find food, climb trees, and compete with healthier animals, with many never reaching adulthood. Despite those overwhelming odds, Jimothy appears remarkably healthy and agile, but every day in the wild remains a fight for survival, making him an unlikely symbol of resilience. This photo shows soccer legend Diego Maradona wearing a no-drugs jersey in 1993 after returning from a 15-month suspension for testing positive for cocaine. By then, his addiction had already destroyed his legendary career at Napoli, led to a police raid on his home, and resulted in his arrest for drug possession. Just a year later, he was expelled from the 1994 World Cup after another failed drug test, ending his international career. And a third failed test in 1997 brought his playing career to a humiliating close. Even after retiring, his health only continued to collapse. He suffered a cocaine-related heart attack in 2000, was hospitalized with severe hepatitis in 2004, and endured multiple life-threatening medical emergencies before dying of heart failure in 2020, just weeks after brain surgery, with prosecutors later claiming negligent medical care contributed to his death. This was the moment a commercial saturation diver was suddenly attacked by a swordfish while working 720 feet beneath the ocean's surface off the coast of Brazil. The fish quickly rammed him from behind, driving its razor-sharp bill into the emergency life support system on his back, where it became stuck. Unable to reach the swordfish himself, the diver carefully made it back to the diving bell as the fish violently thrashed behind him. Miraculously, the diver was unharmed as the swordfish eventually managed to free itself. In 2008, two high school dropouts from Calabasas discovered Paris Hilton kept a spare key under her doormat and burglarized her $6 million mansion 5 separate times before she even realized anything was missing. Their group, later dubbed the Bling Ring, targeted celebrities they tracked through gossip websites and social media, ultimately stealing an estimated $3 million worth of cash, jewelry, designer clothing, and luxury watches from stars including Lindsay Lohan, Orlando Bloom, and Megan Fox, before police finally unraveled the spree and arrested the crew. Between 2011 and 2012, a group of thieves pulled off one of the strangest heists in Canadian history, stealing nearly 3,000 tons of maple syrup worth over $18 million from a warehouse in Quebec. They siphoned the syrup out of the official barrels belonging to the province's maple syrup reserve and quietly refilled them with water to hide the theft. The scheme went unnoticed for months until a routine inspection revealed the barrels were suspiciously light. The investigation led to multiple arrests and exposed a black market syrup operation that was much bigger than anyone could have ever expected. Despite suffering from stomach cancer, Raul Julia accepted the role of M. Bison in the 1994 Street Fighter movie because his children were huge fans of the games and wanted to see their father play the villain. He pushed through filming while seriously ill, then suffered a stroke and died aged 54 in 1994, just days before the movie made it to theaters. Just a few weeks before earning her college degree, Sherilyn Kahelig was killed in a car accident. At her graduation, her grieving father carried a life-size cardboard cutout of her through the ceremony and accepted her diploma on her behalf. Sherilyn had dreamed of graduating so she could lift her family out of poverty, and her younger brother has vowed to carry on that dream in her honor. In September of 1975, Marine veteran Oliver Sipple grabbed the arm of a woman as she pointed a loaded revolver at President Gerald Ford, causing her assassination attempt to fail by mere inches. But instead of becoming known as the man who saved a president, Sipple was involuntarily outed as gay as activists in the media publicized his sexuality, leading to a permanent estrangement from much of his family. He struggled with severe depression, alcoholism, and isolation for years afterward, and died alone in his San Francisco apartment in 1989 at just 47 years old, his body reportedly not being discovered for nearly 2 weeks. Former fitness model Lonnie Willison once appeared on magazine covers and lived a glamorous Hollywood lifestyle while she was married to former Baywatch actor Jeremy Jackson. But after her turbulent marriage with him ended, she reportedly struggled with severe mental illness, addiction, and financial collapse, eventually losing her job, apartment, and car before becoming homeless in Los Angeles. She's since been photographed searching through dumpsters for food and pushing all her belongings in a shopping cart. Wilson has said she deliberately keeps herself dirty and foul-smelling because she believes it makes her less likely to be assaulted while sleeping on the streets. Despite repeated offers of housing, rehab, and financial help from friends, she's consistently refused assistance, saying she prefers to live independently. In 1995, Mr. T was diagnosed with T-cell lymphoma. True to his larger-than-life personality, his first reaction was to joke, "Can you imagine that? Cancer with my name on it. Personalized cancer." After undergoing years of chemotherapy and radiation, he beat the disease and has remained cancer-free ever since. In 1976, a camper near the Gaines Rock Pit in the Florida Keys was approached by a hippie-looking stranger who offered to show him a human skeleton for 25 cents. After seeing the partially decomposed remains, the camper immediately contacted authorities. The victim was eventually identified as 15-year-old Stephanie Sempel, who had disappeared months earlier after hitchhiking to the Florida Keys. Nearly 50 years later, Stephanie's murder still remains unsolved. This 1982 photograph captured 18-year-old Patty Gifford celebrating New Year's Eve in Fort Lauderdale just hours before she would disappear forever. The man standing behind her was 22-year-old Dennis Sokor, who prosecutors said kidnapped, raped, and strangled her after she rejected his sexual advances later that night. Patty's friend unknowingly photographed him in the background, creating the image that ultimately helped investigators identify her killer after he fled the state. Sokor later confessed to the murder, though he never revealed where he dumped her body, leaving Patty's family without a grave for more than 4 decades. Her boyfriend never married, hoping she'd one day be found so they could be buried together, but he died in 2020 before that wish could be fulfilled. On July 14, 2026, after spending nearly 40 years on Florida's death row, Sokor was executed, apologizing for his crimes in his final statement, while Patty's remains are still missing. Serial killer Richard Ramirez spent nearly 24 years on California's death row before dying in 2013 from complications of B-cell lymphoma at age 53, never having been executed. In the weeks before his death, advanced liver failure reportedly turned his skin a vivid green, with several prison sources claiming he looked like a green highlighter pen. Despite being sentenced to death in 1989 for 13 murders and various other violent crimes, he died of natural causes while still awaiting execution. This box contains hundreds of knee replacements that outlived the people they were implanted in. During cremation, the human body is reduced to ashes, but artificial joints survive the furnace intact. They're removed afterward, collected like this, and often recycled into new products, with many crematories donating the proceeds to charitable causes. Poker champion Victoria Corin Mitchell once sought therapy to overcome her fear of flying, but in a cruel twist of fate, her therapist was later killed in a plane crash. The tragedy reinforced her long-standing phobia rather than curing it, and she's avoided flying ever since, often traveling by train or boat instead. In 2012, an Icelandic TV station accidentally aired an episode of the Teletubbies with subtitles from HBO's The Sopranos, leaving children watching cheerful characters while captions referenced murder, dead dogs, drugs, and impotence. The bizarre mix-up was spotted by an adult viewer who photographed the screen before the broadcast ended. Just months later, the channel shut down completely and its archives were destroyed, meaning the original footage is believed to have disappeared forever. Today, only a few blurry photos remain as evidence that the surreal broadcast ever happened. Just 7 days after being released from prison, Aaron Tucker had less than $2 to his name and was on his way to a life-changing job interview when he watched a car flip over and begin filling with smoke. Knowing the bus would leave without him and he'd miss the interview, he ran off anyway, pulled the badly injured 61-year-old driver from the wreck moments before it caught fire, and used his own dress shirt to stop the man's bleeding. Tucker missed the interview but saved the stranger's life, and after his story went viral, donations topped $50,000 within days, and employers lined up to offer him a second chance. For more than 50 years, this man kept a secret so unbelievable that even his own family had no idea who he really was. In 1969, 20-year-old bank teller Ted Conrad stole $215,000 from a bank in Cleveland, equivalent to nearly $2 million today, and simply disappeared without a trace. The FBI spent more than 50 years pursuing leads, making the case one of the longest-running fugitive investigations in U.S. history. But Conrad successfully built an entire new life near Boston under the name Thomas Randell. He eventually married, raised a daughter, became a golf enthusiast, and lived as an ordinary suburban family man while investigators remained unaware of his whereabouts. But in 2021, while dying of lung cancer, he finally admitted to his daughter that he was one of America's most wanted fugitives and begged her to keep it secret. Months after his death, investigators used old documents and genealogy records to confirm his identity, finally closing the case 52 years after the theft. His daughter later revealed the story to the world through a podcast about her father's hidden past. From 2011 to 2013, Texas neurosurgeon Christopher Dunge turned routine spinal operations into disasters, leaving 33 of his 38 patients dead, paralyzed, or permanently maimed. Patients woke up unable to walk, suffering chronic pain, nerve damage, severed vocal cords, or life-threatening injuries after Dunge cut through healthy issues, operated on the wrong areas of the spine, and in some cases left surgical hardware improperly placed inside their bodies. During one surgery, a fellow surgeon reportedly had to physically stop him after he continued causing catastrophic damage to a patient's spine. Despite mounting complaints, multiple hospitals allowed him to simply resign rather than formally report him, enabling him to keep finding new jobs and patients. By the time his medical license was finally revoked, 2 patients were dead and dozens of others were left with life-altering injuries. He was later sentenced to life in prison for the repeated malpractice. Actor Jesse Eisenberg donated one of his kidneys to a complete stranger in 2025 after learning more about the organ shortage crisis. During the operation, doctors discovered the intended recipient had become too sick to receive the transplant, so Eisenberg's kidney was redirected to a different stranger elsewhere in the country. He never learned the recipient's identity, recovered without major complications, and later said he had no regrets, joking that he wished he had more kidneys to give. In 1943, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann became the first person to intentionally take LSD after accidentally being exposed to it days earlier in a laboratory. Believing the amount was insignificant, he swallowed 250 micrograms, a dose now considered to be extremely powerful. Within a few hours, Hoffman was plunged into a waking nightmare. He experienced overwhelming hallucinations, felt his body and mind breaking apart, became convinced he'd been poisoned, and feared he was permanently losing his sanity. At one point, he believed he was dying and that the world around him had transformed into something sinister and unrecognizable. The 6-hour ordeal became the first documented LSD trip in history and is now remembered as Bicycle Day, after the ride home during which the drug's effects had reached their terrifying peak. This was the horrifying moment a little Chinese girl realized that escalators are not toys. Somehow the child ended up hanging from the outside of an escalator, gripping the moving handrail as it carried her higher and higher above the floor. Unable to pull herself up or climb back down, she was dragged all the way to the top where her body became wedged against a glass barrier. As the escalator continued moving, the handrail kept pulling on her arms, leaving her completely trapped and dangling helplessly above the drop. Luckily, before anything bad could happen, 2 men rushed over, grabbed the girl, and pulled her to safety. Escalator accidents may seem rare, but falls, entrapments, and mechanical incidents have caused serious injuries and deaths around the world. This was the moment a woman instantly disappeared beneath the sidewalk. After getting off a motorcycle taxi in Brazil, she stepped onto what appeared to be a normal manhole cover. Instead, the cover suddenly gave way beneath her, sending her plunging to the hole below. The fall happened so quickly that she barely had time to react, and found herself immediately trapped in the shaft with murky water up to her chest. Luckily, a shocked bystander saw her fall in and ran over to the rescue. She survived with moderate injuries and was eventually pulled from the hole by people nearby. Investigators later determined that 2 men attempted to steal the cover earlier that morning and failed to put it back securely. Though incidents like this are rare, manhole falls can be deadly. Just weeks earlier, a 56-year-old grandma in New York was killed this exact way. The rarest pics ever taken, Part 7. During an extreme heat wave in India, temperatures became so intense that the asphalt on this road began to soften and melt. As the surface warped under the heat, the painted crosswalk lines twisted and stretched into bizarre wave-like patterns, creating a scene that looks more like a glitch than a real-life photograph. Photographer Martin LeMay captured this awesome image in England after a weasel leaped onto a woodpecker mid-flight and took a ride on the bird's back. The startled woodpecker eventually escaped after managing to land. Here are some rare photos of the silky anteater, the smallest anteater species on Earth. Found high in the rainforests of Central and South America, they spend nearly their entire lives hidden in the canopy feeding on ants. Their secretive lifestyle and perfect camouflage makes them one of the most difficult rainforest mammals to find, and surprisingly little is known about their behavior in the wild. Is that what I think it is? An incredibly rare, ultra premium, highly coveted Matsusaka sirloin steak. This is the last known photograph of a quagga, a zebra-like animal that once roamed southern Africa. Unlike modern zebras, quaggas only had stripes on the front half of their bodies, while the rest of their coats were mostly brown. European settlers hunted them heavily throughout the 1800s for their meat and hides, while farmers also killed them to reduce competition with livestock. The final wild quagga is believed to have been shot in the late 1870s, and the last known individual died in captivity at Amsterdam's Artis Zoo in 1883. No one even realized the species had gone extinct until long after the last quagga was dead. It's been over a week since the tragic death of Oliver Tree, so here's everything we know so far. On June 14th, the 32-year-old singer was killed when two helicopters collided over Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, killing all 6 people on board. One of the helicopters crashed into a car dealership and burst into flames, setting multiple vehicles on fire. One of the most disturbing details came from a witness who said he saw a passenger jump from one of the helicopters after the collision but before it struck the ground. Authorities never confirmed who that person was, but if the account is accurate, it means at least one victim may have been aware of what was happening in the final moments before the crash. The accident was reportedly so severe that Oliver Tree was left unrecognizable, with authorities forced to rely on dental records because of the condition of his remains after the fire. Among the other victims were Argentine YouTuber Gaspy, music producer Lucas Froda, director Lucas Vignali, and both pilots. In a chilling twist, another producer who was reportedly supposed to be on the flight backed out last minute because he was afraid of flying. More than a week later, investigators still haven't determined exactly what caused the collision. Authorities are reviewing flight records, radio communications, radar data, and the movement of both helicopters in the moments before impact. While some reports have suggested possible human error, investigators have not released an official cause and have warned that the investigation could take years to complete. This uncertainty has fueled widespread speculation about what actually happened. In a recent interview, the father of Argentine YouTuber Gaspy, one of the victims alongside Oliver Tree, said he personally believes the crash was an attack rather than an accident. He didn't provide evidence for this claim, and authorities have not indicated foul play was involved. However, the comments have resonated with many people online, where theories continue to circulate that there may have been something more going on than a simple aviation accident. For now, investigators have not found evidence supporting these claims, but until an official cause is released, the questions surrounding the crash are likely to continue. Since the crash, Oliver's remains have been returned to California, and his family has begun carrying out one of his final wishes. Rather than leaving his wealth to relatives, he wanted to use it to support artists through a foundation called Dr. Oliver Tree's Extremely Epic Grant for Baby Geniuses, which is now being created in his honor.